Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from Talk. So pop the kettle on. This is The Royal Tea. I'm Sarah Hewson. Coming up on today's show, we look ahead to this weekend's Trooping the Colour. Plus, why King Charles is fed up with FaceTiming his grandchildren. And find out what advice Prince Louis gave to the England football team. Joining me today to discuss all that and more are The Sun's royal editor Matt Wilkinson and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, the King said he's very much looking forward to Trooping the Colour on Saturday as he presented new colours to the Irish Guards at Windsor Castle. Matt, this is a really big day, a really special occasion to celebrate his official birthday. And only a few months ago, it wasn't clear whether he would be attending at all.
No, I'm glad he is. He wanted to appear on horseback, but they thought that was a little bit too dangerous because he did have trouble with his horse last year, so he'll be in a carriage. Now, obviously, his birthday's in November, but he has the monarch has two birthdays. He goes back to King George III, and they decided to maybe have a kind of big bonanza with all the household cavalry in the summertime. So that's why we have it in June, because we can guarantee a bit more weather.
Well, when you say that.
Yeah, we hope so, yeah.
Practically like November.
That was the idea, anyway. But no, so it's always been about the monarch, but now it's kind of more and more becoming about the wider members of the royal family, the other ones that are going to turn up and support the king, and also the huge crowds. I mean, there are a lot of people turn out for this. I used to watch it on TV as a child, but I now go, and it's a real spectacular. Yeah. The noise, the sounds, the smells, the horses,
the fly past,
the balcony. There's so much in it. And we went for a couple of years, during COVID era, where we didn't kind of have these kind of big spectacular things. To actually to hold events like this is really enjoyable. The King will enjoy it, he likes it, and then we'll probably, hopefully, get to see lots of other members of the royal family.
And you're being very delicate about that, because the big question is, will the Princess of Wales make an appearance on the balcony? There's been rumours that perhaps she might.
Lots and lots of rumours, and of course the crowd would go wild if she were to do that. I mean, I think expectations are being dampened, as they have been throughout, both the King and the Princess of Wales's cancers, because of course it's much better to assume that they're not going to be there, and then if they are there, there's great excitement around it rather than the other way round. So my gut feeling is she won't be there. That seems to be the mood music coming out of it. But there, it would be wonderful if she were. And I'm so disappointed that Charles won't be on horseback, because again, a few weeks ago there started to be rumours that he was pushing his medical team, saying he really wanted to. And just as Matt was saying, Noble, who is his new, he used to have George, who apparently was a real plodder, that a bomb could go off and George wouldn't flicker a whisker. Noble is a female, a mare, completely different kettle of fish, very, very skittish. And I think that the medical team were, no, that is not worth the risk. And presumably Charles is, although he's doing so much more at the moment, presumably he is pretty tired.
He's still going through treatment.
Anybody undergoing treatment for cancer is going to be much more fatigued than they would normally, particularly if you're in your mid-70s. So it would have been asking a lot for him to be on horseback, but it would have been great.
Well, they're tailoring all these engagements to try and make them happen. So he had to go to trooping. When he went to D-Day, he had cancer the day before. I don't know if you spoke about this before, but he had cancer the day before, then still kind of managed it. And that's what they're doing with this. They look at it and think, of course he's going to be on the balcony, of course he's going to be in an open-top carriage, but they just have to, make sure that nothing goes wrong.
But that's the thing, because he can't afford, then, if he does do an event that completely wipes him out, he would then be so disappointed to pull out of future events. So it is all about being sensible and trying to just do these things in bite-sized chunks. But of course, all eyes will be, as we both said, on the wider family and who will be taking centre stage.
Because, I mean, if the Princess of Wales isn't there, who then looks after the three children in the carriage if they're going to be there as well? We were told by Kensington Palace at the time when she revealed her diagnosis that she was going to be taking this time out in order to undergo her treatment, but that she may decide at points to attend certain key events, and that shouldn't be seen as a sign of a return to work. I suppose this could be one of those, and a balcony appearance is a relatively safe way. You're not having to come face to face with the public, you're there, but it would, I suppose, then lead to more discussion about, is she coming back to work?
Of course. I mean, what I'm told is that it's all guided by her doctors, by her medical team. And it's very much like we're taking advice from, Macmillan or whoever it is. We're taking advice from the cancer specialist. And she could wake up on Saturday morning and say, of course I could do this. But she might not. So and then if you start, they've also asked us not to speculate because they're saying that she needs to recover in private. So I find it really difficult sometimes to to enter into to really encourage people to speculate what she's going to do. She'll come back when she's good and ready, and but it is an opportunity. It could be done in a safe way, but they will be guided by the medical.
And of course, we did have that big furore over the Ministry of Defence announcing that she was going to be attending the Colonel's Review and selling tickets for it, and actually then Kensington Palace saying, no, hold on, we haven't said anything. They don't want to be making any kind of promises. That took place last week, Daisy.
And she sent a very delightful letter, saying, I'm so sorry, I can't be there, and so on. And of course, she's going to say, I'm so proud of you, and I'll hope to be there in the future, not too distant future. But those things, within the royal family, being the figurehead of a regiment is a really big deal. When they give out those those duties, there's an awful lot of behind the scenes, who's getting what, and so for her to have a regiment, she clearly wants to be seen to be doing the best for them. And I thought it was quite poignant, her letter, of how disappointed she is. I don't know, but I need to ask you, I know you said you're not allowed to speculate, but what's your gut feeling about trooping, whether she'll be there?
Well, as I said, I don't think they will make decisions until very late for anything. Well, I imagine she won't be back till the sensible decision will come back in the autumn.
Yeah.
Why do you need to push her out there? But the interesting thing on the letter she wrote is that it said, I would look forward to seeing you very soon. So is that very soon phrase that then suddenly you think, well,
but it's in the absence of a lot of details that, of course, we cling on to those smaller bits, which may just have been written, And
of course, the problem, if she does go to trooping, it'll be the first time we've seen her live, as it were, rather than a photograph, a still photograph, or a pre-recorded film, which of course she did when she made her announcement, which, although we're led to believe there weren't a lot of different takes, we don't know that. Of course, when you put somebody in a live situation, every single breath she takes is going to be poured over. Her face is going to be, people are going to be saying, does she look tired? Has she lost hair? Has she lost weight? Is she walking in a certain way? And I just wonder whether she's ready for that level of intense scrutiny yet.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
It would be so dispiriting afterwards. You think you've done something sort of for the greater good, and actually you just get reams and reams and reams of people poring over, has she got bags under her eyes? Were her clothes hanging off her? You sort of think, is she ready for that?
She's going to be, Princess of Wales for the next, it's like 10, 15 years. She's going to be Queen. So we're going to have another 50, 40 years of her giving proper service to the country. Let's just accept and just understand. Just leave her be if she wants 5, 6, 7 months, whatever. She's done 10, 20 years or whatever of faultless work for us, never really put a foot wrong. So I'd like to be patient, and I find it difficult to really get into speculating when we might see her next, but who knows?
Well, I think who knows is exactly right, because it depends how her treatment goes, and it is all in the hands of that medical team, isn't it, to guide on that. Now, King Charles and Queen Camilla are set to visit the Channel Islands next month. The visit on the 15th of July will be the first time a British monarch has visited Jersey since 2005, when Queen Elizabeth II went to the island. So before that, we've got the Japanese state visit, the incoming state visit, and then we're going to see the King and Queen heading to the Channel Islands at Daisy. I think he's doing more than a lot of us anticipated when it was first announced he was going to make this gradual return to work.
Yes, definitely. And in some ways, Rishi Sunak's surprise election has done him a bit of a favour, because there are certain things that the monarch can't do during an election campaign. He can't be seen to be sort of propping up one party over another, or whatever it might be. So in some ways, that's quite a handy excuse. So, for instance, we know the Japanese state visit is going ahead, but not quite as it would. It's not quite as onerous as it would have been if Parliament had been sitting and there wasn't an election campaign. And I think the Guernsey visit, the Channel Islands visit, will be fantastic. It's a place I'm very fond of. I spent a lot of my family summer holidays, had an auntie that lived there. And they will be, on the islands, they will be so excited about the visit. And it's not just a sort of tourism, flying the flag, flag for the islands. Of course, there's a huge amount of financial services in the Channel Islands as well because of their special tax codes, and those businesses will get a bit of a boost from this visit as well. So I think that'll be fascinating. I can never remember why they're called a bailiwick. The announcement always says the bailiwick of, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, of Guernsey and Jersey. But it's such an extraordinary, unique place. I'm really looking forward to seeing them there.
One thing I'm impressed by going to Jersey and Guernsey, they are lovely places to go, but since the coronation, I think Camilla went to Isle of Man.
Yes.
I've been to Northern Ireland. Scotland Week's coming up in July.
Yeah.
I think they've been to Cornwall. And then Jersey and Guernsey. They've really gone to four corners of the country already, and I think that's so important. That they go into these lesser known or further flung places. I'm impressed.
And actually putting the focus at home, because we're not seeing these big outgoing state visits at the moment, but really focusing, and that immediate focus after he became king and around the coronation as well of those home nations. Very important indeed. Earlier this week, Prince William met the England squad and spoke to coach Gareth Southgate ahead of their first match against Serbia on Sunday. William had some advice for the players from his son, Louis. Matt, Louis's tips for the England squad?
Well, so William said he was on the school run that morning and he told his children, I'm meeting the England squad later, what advice shall I give them? And Louis' advice was, well, if you go into a football tournament, then eat twice as much as you normally would. And I think that says a lot more about Louis' mindset.
Louis loves his food, quite clearly.
Harry Kane, the England captain, was there and he was interviewed afterwards and he said, it was very nice to hear that, but I don't think our nutritionist will take that on board. So.
And William was very funny, saying, he was imagining them all running around the pitch with stitches and I think he said great big bellies full of too much food. But there are a lot of things about this story that are very sweet, but also very sort of on message for both William and Kate, because it paints a picture of William being an ordinary dad, doesn't it? Dropping it into conversation or into a speech to footballers that he was on the school run, chatting to his children about his day. It's very endearing and makes him seem a bit less aloof, a bit more normal than perhaps royals have been in the past.
And also bringing Louis into the conversation, because of course we had Princess Charlotte's message to the Lionesses, didn't we? George has been to matches with him. Now kind of, Louis being brought into that
and
dynamic.
It also, we all remember occasions when politicians are asked about football and they so often trip themselves up by pretending that they're football fans when they're clearly not. They're clearly rugby fans or cricket fans.
Rishi Sunak did it on his visit to Wales.
Yes, exactly. You're looking forward to the football. We're not in it. Toe-curlingly cringy. But of course, William genuinely seems to love his footy, and that's really helpful as well.
Well, he likes Aston Villa.
Yes.
Whenever I've been on jobs, I was in the Caribbean and on the Caribbean tour, and there was a football game that William took part in, and Leon Bailey was an Aston Villa player, and he spent his whole time talking to the Aston Villa player.
Because he was excited.
Because he was an Aston Villa player. And I've got friends that don't like the royal family or don't pay much attention to royal news, but I use them as a focus group and say, what do you think of certain royals? And with William, they always say, well, he seems like he's a nice dad, and he likes his football.
Yeah.
And they're two things that people look at, take the whole royal spectacular out of it, and they're two,
Well, he used to play it, didn't he? He used to play five-a-side football with his mates in Battersea Park, and he's a big Villa fan, taken George to quite a few matches as well, hasn't he? And he's going to be attending one of the group matches next week.
He's going to the Denmark game. Yeah. I'm going to that game as well, actually, as a fan. So
not on duty.
That's when work and holiday collide, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that you're lucky mascots on that occasion. William's also been in Wales talking about seaweed.
Talking about seaweed. Now, we know that his other passion, apart from his family and his footy, of course, is the Earthshot prize, where they hand out £1 million to each winner, and the winner has to have come up with some sort of solution to an environmental problem that the world is facing. So it is a brilliant it's a brilliant idea, and he's obviously very, very passionate about it. And this was the latest. This was a surprise visit to Cornwall, talking about seaweed and all the different uses that it can be as a sustainable product. And it's interesting, isn't it, as we see the sort of the green baton being passed in some ways from Charles. Not that he's giving it up entirely, but from Charles to William. We've seen him making speeches on really, really big occasions that this is something he really wants to be famous for.
We were told that he has a specific interest in seaweed. That William has an interest or a fascination.
That would be his subject on Mastermind.
Well,
would it?
I don't
Celebrity
know.
Mastermind.
But it reminds me of his, like you say, of his father,
Yeah.
where he would get stuck into the detail of an environmental project. And William is because this Nopla was they've created packaging for food items made from seaweed, not completely from seaweed, but partially from seaweed for it to be recyclable. And he's met. William's been with this guy several times after he's won the award, Earthshot Award. He is interested in it, and he has a fascination into how seaweed can be used to help
Trying to
the
reduce
environment.
our single-use
And
plastics.
it reminds me of the kind of thing that Charles would have got involved in back in the day.
Really interesting. We talked a couple of weeks ago on the show about the first official portrait of King Charles since his coronation. Well, now it has been defaced by activists at a London gallery. Animal Rising campaigners plastered Wallace and Gromit-themed posters onto the new painting of the monarch, which is currently on display at the Philip Mould Gallery in London on Tuesday of this week. Daisy, what was this protest all about?
Well, firstly, it just annoyed me so intensely, and I suspect, I would love to see a poll or a focus group. I suspect that I'm not alone. I think the fact that this portrait, now they didn't damage it, does have perspex in front of it, so they weren't sticking.
Yes, the artist Jonathan Yeo had foreseen that something like this
might
happen.
get some sort of orange paint from whatever group. But of course, they were maintaining that Charles and the royal family are not on the sides of proper animal rights and so on, which I don't think. There are some things you can point to where I think the military and the Royals by association have some questions to answer, particularly bearskin hats, which I think is something that will have to be changed over time, as in each bearskin hat takes a whole bear. And I think those are issues which have some merit in being discussed from an animal rights point of view. But I think anyone pointing to Charles, who was one of the earliest proponents of organic and farming and so on, I think is absolutely potty.
Was this directed at him? Was it? It was
And
about the
the
RSPCA,
RSPCA,
wasn't it?
and him
And
being
he's patron,
yeah.
so by association.
I mean, to be honest, it was just, I think it was just done by this organisation to get them publicity. If they'd done it somewhere else, no one would have talked about it. The fact it was the King's portrait,
Yeah.
it was just the most high-profile portrait that they could attack. I generally don't, I think as we mentioned about Charles and his environment work, he's done all sorts of great work on, on animal welfare. He has an organic, he's changed Sandringham into organic, he's done all sorts of environmental and animal welfare stuff across the duchy. I just think they just took this as an opportunity. They just saw it as something that they could attack to give them,
And
because I've never
apparently
heard
they
of
chose
them
Wallace
before,
and Gromit.
Animal Rising.
And they chose Wallace and Gromit posters because apparently he's a fan.
Well,
Who knew? You learn something new every week.
And also, it's worth adding that Belle, what are their dogs called? Bluebell and what are the two Jack Russells were rescued. Beth and Bluebell were rescued from Battersea Dogs
Yeah.
Home. The man's done plenty, I think, on animal welfare.
The society wedding of the year between the Duke of Westminster and Olivia Henson took place last Friday. Prince William was on duties as an usher, but his brother and his father, King Charles, were not in attendance. This was quite the wedding, wasn't it, Matt?
it was a non-royal wedding. Well, no, it was a royal non-wedding. Which
Yeah.
way do I describe it? It was a royal
As
wedding.
close to a
in
royal
all
wedding
but.
as you could get.
Yeah, because and it's interesting that the Duke, the guy, Duke of Westminster,
Hughie Grosvenor.
Yeah, no, he's friends with Harry. He's godfather to Archie.
He is.
Yep.
He's the richest Briton under 40, and he's friends with William as well. He could, but he's going to be important, possibly an important power broker in years. And this wedding, we might look back on this wedding as more significant than we look at it. We look at it as fun. Look at the dresses. William's an usher. He caught the bus with all the other guests. If Harry was there, maybe William would have had to show him to his seat. But I think it's quite significant, this fella. I think he could, he could almost work as a bridge between these two warring brothers. I think watch this space on this.
I think if Harry had been there, Harry would have been. If things had been different and the brothers weren't at war, I think Harry would have been an usher too. We would have seen, both the brothers standing there handing out, the wedding programmes and so on. And a lot of people, because this date has obviously been in the diary for quite a long time, a lot of people were thinking, could this be the moment where we saw yet another lost opportunity where bridges could have been built? But no. And of course, the word coming out of Montecito unofficially was that Harry had been invited, had decided that it would overshadow the day if he were to turn up, because that's what people would be
Which is the right decision to make, isn't it? Because it's not their day.
Right. But I also think, from a human point of view, imagine if the godfather of your child was getting married and you couldn't be there. I would be gutted. Presumably this is one of his best friends. If if they're godparents to each other's children, not to be there at the wedding is a big deal and so sad.
But I mean, Matt describing it as a sort of royal but not royal wedding. I mean, because the streets of Chester were lined. It was almost like a Windsor occasion, wasn't it?
They were, and I was really surprised by that because, as you mentioned the weather earlier, the weather looked pretty awful. There were really high winds. It looked freezing cold. And there were people out and about, for a couple who, most people in the street would never have heard of. But of course, they knew this was going to be a really big occasion with lots of big guests. And her dress was stunning.
Absolutely
with the keyhole back and the huge veil that was, swirling around in the
wind.
Which
I think had lace from her grandmother's veil sewn into it as well. And flowers gathered from their estate, Eaton Hall, which I thought was very much in keeping with, Charles.
Which was very Charles. And then all those flowers were being sent to local businesses. And I think local people were being given free ice cream and free fish and chips or something like that as a sort of...
Sorry for the inconvenience.
Sorry for the inconvenience, exactly. And many people making lots of parallels between the new Duchess and the Princess of Wales, Catherine, saying they're from very similar background. They look very similar. They seem to be quite down to earth. You've got all of that going on. So you can expect to see the new Duchess, I think, in all those gossip mags coming up.
Well, King Charles has one major regret about his relationship with his youngest son, Harry. He is keen to build a relationship with his grandchildren, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, and is reportedly frustrated that he only gets to see them occasionally over FaceTime. I mean, this is the big tragedy of this family feud, really, isn't it, Daisy?
Yeah.
That Archie and Lilibet have met their grandfather, Lilibet, once?
Yes.
That we know of, really.
Yes, and apparently they do FaceTime, but as the reports are coming out, that's not enough. And my father died when I was pregnant with my first child. And the thought that I would, which is obviously, a real sadness for me and a real sadness for them that they never got to meet him. And the thought that Archie and Lilibet's grandfather is keen to have a relationship with them and has cancer, and they still can't get it together and can't sort this issue out, I think will make a lot of people quite cross. It's nice to hear that he is keen, and we know he's a very active, very loving grandfather to Louis, Charlotte, and George. And he's planted a wood for George, which he talks about very often as his passion, and he's built playgrounds in one of his many gardens and so on. So he when Camilla has talked about how he loves reading them Harry Potter and doing all the voices, and he's called Grandpa Wales. We get all these details coming out about this really special bond that he has with Catherine and William's children, and then has never held those children, for years, hasn't sort of kissed them, cuddled them. It just seems so sad.
Well, look, I have absolutely no doubt that King Charles would like a relationship with Lilibet and Archie, and I think it's probably quite sad that he doesn't have any contact with them. But I'm not sure generally whether he has this much video contact with the children. I think I'm aware of once on his birthday, I think there was a video that was played to him. And I'm just kind of a little bit nervous about this story, because I did a story back in November where there were people quite close to the King who were suggesting that they were worried that the Sussexes were trying to blackmail the King on things like access to the child, access to the grandchildren, wanting help with security. And as I say, I'm told that Charles has kind of waved away lots of calls and stuff like this, but of course he wants to have time with the children. Of course he would love to have more videos, but I actually don't think there is that much contact coming from Montecito.
Well, he doesn't have a phone anyway, does he? So it's not like he's getting these WhatsApp.
He borrows an
video
iPad
calls.
off Camilla for certain things.
Right.
So it's just I like the idea that Charles does want to have time with the grandchildren. But I just wonder whether this is coming out of Montecito, again, as part of this kind of effort to kind of just squeeze the king a little bit and kind of encourage him to kind of open up a little bit to them, because he's got lots of other stuff going on. He's got his cancer fight. He's got to be a king and stuff like that. And I'm just a little bit nervous about claiming that the king is upset that he hasn't had all this kind of video time, because I'm not convinced that it's been happening. If
That's not
sense.
His way of doing things necessarily.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And I wonder, but it'd be interesting if these stories were coming out of the Harry and Meghan camp. It makes them look bad to a lot of people. So why would they want to make themselves look bad? I mean, unless, as you were perhaps implying, it was some sort of emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
And people have been saying, if Charles really wanted to see the grandchildren, he shouldn't have kicked them out of Frogmore, because that would have provided them with a home that they would have had the security that they say they need.
And security, of course, is one of the key issues why Harry says he's not able to bring his family back. He has been given now permission to appeal against the rejection of his legal challenge to the government's decision to take away his police protection when he's in Britain. He started the action after the Home Office, the ministry responsible for policing, decided in February 2020 that he would not automatically receive personal police security when in Britain. But Harry's request to expedite his appeal was denied by a Court of Appeal judge who said he couldn't jump the queue. It is a victory, though, for Prince Harry, isn't it? Because initially he'd been told there was absolutely no case, that he'd lost catastrophically in his case, but he's gone to the Court of Appeal now and they've said, actually, there are grounds here for us to look at this.
So I've sat through a couple of these court cases, and I can't even remember where we are at the moment. There are
No,
appeals,
I know.
there are counter appeals, and he's told he can't. The Home Office say you can't, then the judge says you can, then have appeal. It's all very confusing. At the end of the day, he's not going to win. Okay, he's not going to win. The Home Office said we don't, do guns for hire. When he does come over, he has to submit. If he wants protection, he can get it, but he has to submit 30 days in advance and say, I'm coming over, could I have protection? Sometimes he does have protection, but he doesn't have it automatically. And that's the problem. Look, this will rumble on. It will cost a lot of people a lot of money. I've said this before, and I said again, I think it's kind of insulting to the Met Police, the Home Office, our government, and the royal household to think that he wouldn't be protected in this country. He goes to Nigeria, he goes to Jamaica, he's been to Japan, he's been to Germany, he's been to Holland, to Canada, and nothing happens. To assume that he comes here and it's somehow different, that he needs, this extra level of protection, it's too dangerous to bring his family here, I think it's quite insulting. I think the police look at this and say, well, of course we'll look after the king's son, no matter how many appeals and court cases you go through.
But there have been interviews done with senior Metropolitan Police figures who have said that there are threats, real, tangible, credible threats on Harry and Meghan and the family in this country that, perhaps they wouldn't be in Nigeria or Canada or Holland or wherever. And I think we as a nation would want to feel that we were protecting Harry because he's our prince, even if he's deserted the royal family, even if he's lived, he's moved abroad. I think, but the thought that sometimes he would get it and sometimes he wouldn't get it, I understand, particularly what he's gone through with losing his mother. He feels that was a failing of protection of her.
And argued in this case, in fact, that the threat to him and his family was greater now than it was to his mother because of the extra layers of racism and extremism, those threats that you talk about, that Neil Basu talked about from the far right.
Yes. So I'm more sympathetic.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to
Yes,
say,
I know, but he wants it
so,
automatically. He thinks that he believes that he was sort of made an example of by being so cheeky as to say he was leaving. That's his belief, isn't it? That actually he was getting special treatment in the wrong direction, and he's trying to prove that happened in the way the decisions were made, which is ancient history. But it obviously matters so much to him that he can't drop it.
Yeah, I think that this absolutely does show how much it matters to him that he is not willing to let this one go.
And spend millions. Extraordinary.
Well, let's stick on the subject of money. King Charles's £20 note, featuring a unique serial number, has sold for more than 12 times its original value. One lucky Brit sold the King's new uncirculated £20 note for a whopping £245 after 11 bidders desperately tried to get their hands on a rare note. I said uncirculated, but actually they came into circulation last week, didn't they? We asked you if you had received one, found one anywhere, to get in touch. Have you been checking your £20 notes for the King's head and a rare serial number?
I don't think I've held a £20 note in weeks.
No?
I never go to a cash machine anymore. It's always, I would just touch everything.
He never tips anyone because he's mean. Doesn't fit. He's like the Queen was, never has to
Like the
carry
person who
cash.
says he never wins the lottery because he hasn't bought a ticket.
I haven't checked. I completely forgot. I'm going to go leave the studio and have a quick look in my wallet where there is cash for giving people things and paying for stuff. Matt.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I need to change. I need to start looking. They do this a lot with coins as well, whether it's something like an Emily Bronte themed coin or something.
Yeah.
It turns out that this is a collector's item.
Yeah, the £1 coin is suddenly worth £10.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Do I have to check all my? Well, I don't have any money ever in my wallet, but like, do I always have to check my coins all the time? But I mean, it's great that they're still doing this because, having the King's heads on notes, they could have said, well, is it going to cost loads of money? Should we just keep Queen Elizabeth II's on? I'm glad, I'm looking forward to getting some King Charles notes.
It'll take time for them to filter through, won't it? Because they're not replacing the Queen's note, they're just being added.
Phasing it out, yeah.
And it is interesting, actually. Matt makes a really valid point because there is much less, cold, hard cash in circulation than there used to be, which does mean that we are seeing the royal family less often. Mostly every single time you paid for something, you'd be reminded that there is a queen and there she is, and you just wonder whether then that'll be a number. Like, we're using stamps much less than we used to because we're not posting stuff. So all these little things that change our relationship in just tiny day-to-day ways with the royals. I wonder if that will make a difference. And I do feel a bit sad about not having the Queen's head on our notes anymore. It's a sort of passing of time, another moment. It's just a bit weird. It's just all you're used to.
Well, that is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Matt and Daisy. If you want to join in the debate, please leave a comment below and make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss a single episode. We'll be back next week with all the latest on the royal family. Hope you can join us. We'll see you then.